Alright, hey guys. So it's currently really late, and I'm doing this video later than I would have liked, because today it marks the 1 year anniversary of the supposed worst PC build guide in history, and it was released by a tech channel, which makes it even worse. So I haven't seen this video, but I've been recommended to watch it several times, and I wanted to wait until I could do a reaction to it. So while I may not be the best person in the world for building these kind of machines, and as far as I have limited experience myself, but I really like, as far as working with this kind of hardware, I'm told it's going to be a cringe fest at best. So I guess really there's not much left to do besides just dive on into it. And this is the $2,000 custom gaming PC build guide from the Verge. I guess we're gonna find out how bad it really is.
So a few years ago, TC, or managing editor, built a gaming desktop, but it's kind of out of date, and it's definitely not going to hold up for Battlefield 5.
So first off, I recognize this is actually presented by Capital One. As in, Capital One actually paid them to do this, and that is worrisome.
So let's build a new one.
Okay.
You can build a gaming desktop for around $1,000, but I want to go all out, so I spent around $2,000.
Okay, so first off, we're going all out and spending $2,000. Going all out, you'd be going like, if I'm gonna be disappointed if you only use a single graphics card here. If you only use a single graphics card, that's not going all out. But so far, it looks like some of the components are actually pretty decent. I see the H115 Pro RGB from Corsair. It's a pretty beefy cooler. I see Corsair Vengeance RAM. At least I think that's Corsair Vengeance RAM. I see an M.2 drive. I see an Asus ROG motherboard. A pretty decent amount of parts.
PC like this is going to be able to play most.
Yeah, he's got a 1080 GTX 1080 overclock. Honestly, if we were going, no holds barred, this would be a 1080 Ti, but we're nitpicking at this point.
Settings. So
850 watt power supply.
You need to build a desktop. Well, of course, first you need a table.
First, you need a table, guys. You need a table. You gotta have a table. I'm clipping like a crap load here. Hello. First, you need a table. What has he got a Swiss Army knife there?
Preferably not metal. If it's going to be metal,
preferably not metal.
Have an anti-static working surface layered on top of it.
Okay, that's a no-brainer.
A thermal paste applicator.
Hang on.
On top of it, a thermal paste applicator.
A thermal paste? I've literally never seen this in my entire life. A thermal paste applicator. That's not a thing. Please, for the love of God. And is he reaching for an Allen wrench?
An Allen wrench.
What on earth uses an Allen wrench in this entire... This computer built right here, I have rebuilt it 3 times, and I've never used an Allen wrench. So why? I'm willing to bet money he doesn't even use it in this video.
Some tweezers to tighten up the wires.
Okay,
a Swiss Army.
Ladies and gentlemen, these are zip ties, not tweezers. This is going downhill fast.
Army knife, which hopefully has a Phillips head screwdriver in it.
A Swiss Army knife that hopefully has a Phillips head screwdriver. I mean, I can probably open a drawer and find a Phillips head screwdriver. Use a Phillips... You're literally at the headquarters of a tech media center. Like your whole YouTube channel is designed around tech, and you fail to have a Phillips head screwdriver.
And last but not least, an anti-static bracelet, which is...
Okay, so not to discount what he's saying, yes, anti-static bracelets are good. That is a rubber bracelet.
to protect you and the parts. These are the parts you're going to need, but more importantly, before we get there, we need to understand what these parts are doing and how...
It is not even grounded to anything. It is literally just a rubber bracelet he just put on to be fashionable. The way this works is a static bracelet is supposed to attach to either the case or to the surface that you're using so that you stay grounded. This is hurting me to watch.
how they interact with one another.
To better understand the parts that make up a desktop, let's try to understand them individually.
Okay.
The processor is like the computer's brain, the
Right.
base of calculations that control everything the computer does. The motherboard is like the foundation, serving as a main structure for all other parts to be added to.
Right.
It also allows the other parts to communicate with one another, which
Right.
also makes it kind of like a nervous system.
Yeah.
Graphics cards are responsible for rendering and processing visuals
Correct.
into what you see on screen. Our PC's power supply is of course channeling electricity, in that it adjusts and provides the right amount of energy to keep it running. Last but not least, RAM, or random access memory, and your hard drive are good examples of short-term and long-term memory, respectively. If you want to better understand what kind of computer to build, then first figure out what you want to use it for.
Okay, so he's made some good points. This I would actually recommend, like this section, recommend watching if you're not sure how to properly identify the parts of the computer and what their purposes are.
Or, a gamer might care more about a graphics card than, say, a video editor who might want extra RAM to assist with editing large files.
It's partially true.
If you're building a budget build for video streaming, say under $1,000, you want to focus on parts like a Core i5 or Core i3 processor.
Wait, like a Core i5 or Core i3 processor? The i3 processor, if you're like doing a budget build and the best part of your computer is your processor is an i3, you should be looking into a different line of work probably.
That require less energy. They'll be less powerful, but then you'll be able to scale back the cost of several other parts. And if you need help choosing the right parts for your build, there's sites like PCPartPicker.com
Yes,
that help show
PC
presets
Part
for
Picker is
which parts
amazing.
fit together, which sort of part conflicts you might have, and where to find deals on new parts.
We have a lot of boxes and a lot of PC parts, so it's best
Okay,
to unbox
cool.
them, isolate the parts that you
What are you doing?
boxes and a lot of PC parts.
Did he just hang on?
So it's best you unbox them, isolate the
What are you doing?
part.
He destroyed it. He absolutely destroyed that box. It folds open like this. Like this. That's completely unnecessary.
Parts that you really need, place items into the case and make sure that they all fit.
We just started the build. We're having problems. Ugh. So this is what's called a small form factor case, and the purpose of having the power supply on this side with the drives, as you can see here, is that you have more room on the other side for your actual components. Now, this power supply can get pretty warm. There is a fan and a grate on there. Now, this case is sitting upright. Do you see a problem here? Where's the fan? Oh, I don't know, facing the other side where the motherboard's going to be? This thing is going to be choked. This power supply may last 6 months at best on an 80 plus gold rated power supply because this guy put it in backwards. Or not backwards, but he put it with the fan facing the wrong direction.
fit and then start working. And now we're really going to start building by adding the motherboard in. Some notes about
Okay, wait. So you're putting the motherboard in first?
installing motherboards. They're really delicate. You should be really careful with them.
They're not that delicate. They're made of PCB, some pretty strong material. But nonetheless, you need to exercise a little caution.
And screw in with confidence, but also don't screw in too hard, otherwise you could crack the board. I chose Asus's Z370 motherboard for two main reasons. One, it has built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and also it has support for NVMe SSDs.
So don't make or break your motherboard options just for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Most of them are going to have that now. Also, he's making a pretty upsetting mistake for me because you want to build the entire system out of the case first. You want to put your processor and your RAM and your storage, if you have an NVMe solid-state drive, you want to put all that in before you put the motherboard into the case, because they're not going to add much to the weight of the actual motherboard, and they're not going to affect anything. It's going to be easier to put all that on the motherboard outside of the case and then put it into the case when you're done, not vice versa, because then you're working with size constraints and area constraints. And then on top of that, you want to make sure it's all plugged in and everything, and you want to boot it to the monitor outside the case so you can make sure all your parts actually work. The worst feeling in the world is when you completely finish building the computer and you go to actually like power it on, and then the system doesn't work because one of your parts needs to be returned to the manufacturer to be replaced. Yeah, so save yourself time, build outside the case first.
Meaning you can get really fast SSDs that are really easy to install.
Yeah.
Pay close attention to the brace that goes at the back of the computer.
So it's not a brace, it's an I/O shield, because it's input-output shield, but I'll let it slide.
You always have to make sure that you really hammer it in, because
You don't have to hammer it in, it clicks. You just push it until it clicks.
there's no screw, it really just has to go outside of the case and clasp onto the frame. And this is very important because otherwise you can't align the motherboard correctly with the holes. We're just going to start installing all 8 screws.
Okay. Okay.
So next we're going to install the RAM on the motherboard. I chose Corsair's 16GB Vengeance LED RAM for 2 main reasons.
All right.
One, it has LEDs and we do like lights in our gaming desktops. Secondly, it's pretty fast RAM. It's 2666 megahertz.
2666 is not fast. It's fast for, like, compared to like the older styles of RAM, but it's not fast by today's standards. Today's standards, we have it all the way up to 3200 megahertz and 3400 megahertz. 3000 speed RAM would definitely be much better for gaming. 2666 is just for if you wanted to have better results with a consumer grade system, like as far as just going on websites and stuff like that, but not for gaming,
I believe. So it's pretty fast, and this motherboard supports that speed, which is most important.
Good.
Open the slots first and just align.
You've got 2 sticks of RAM and you're opening all 4 DIMM slots. What are you doing?
The stick with the middle of the strip, not with.
Hang on a second. He's installing it backwards. Because you can see, like, you can't see it very well, but right here is where the notches on the motherboard is. This is where the notch of the RAM is. I guarantee you it's not going to show him trying to hammer it in there.
Not with the end, and just lining that up with the logo. So once you hear that solid clasp and you don't see the gold connectors on the side anymore, that's when
He flipped it around. Oh my god. So this editor is saving this dude's bacon.
you know the RAM is in. Step 3, we're going to install the hard drive.
Excuse me, sir. It's... Alright, screw you guys for making me watch this. This hurts. So if you look down here, the RAM is right next to each other. This is a problem. Not only that, but it's in the middle. No, it's on the far end slots. So here's the problem. With RAM like this, these motherboards are designed for what's called dual channel memory. And in order for it to work, you have to put it in 2 slots. It's 2 specific slots for it to work together. And if you don't, one of two things is going to happen. Either one of the RAM sticks isn't even going to show up in your system and it's only going to be using 8 gigabytes of RAM, or you're not going to get dual channel support. He is not going to get dual channel support. Please, God, don't make this get worse.
Or in this case, the NVMe SSD. I chose this format of solid-state drive so that I could input it into the motherboard without having to worry about extra wires or putting it in a separate part of the case and just getting really messy. This is from Kingston.
So, those are decent points, but the most important reason why you get an NVMe solid-state drive is because of speed. It uses a PCIe lane, which is what directly communicates with the processor, so that way you doesn't have to go through a SATA port on the motherboard, and it just is much, much faster. So that's why you get it.
And it's 480 gigabytes, so it's not a lot, but you can always upgrade this and swap it out, and it's only held down by one screw and the latch, so it's really simple.
So I noticed that the standoff for this isn't here. I really hope he fixes that.
And really straightforward. Speed for gaming is important when it comes to a hard drive. You want files to write quickly, and you want games to load quickly.
And no, he didn't.
So that's why it's best.
The standoff is not there. It is bent.
So step 4, we're going to install the graphics card. I chose PNY's GTX 1080, which is overclocked.
That's fine.
So it's a pretty easy installation. You're just going to find the gold connectors.
Right.
And you're going to line this bracket with the back end bracket with your PC case. Now, which lane you choose depends entirely on what other parts you're going to put in the system.
No. What lane you use determines how many of those PCIe lanes you want to use. In gaming builds like this, you always want the graphics card in the top slot because that's where the most PCIe lanes are. You get 16 lanes there, and then the bottom slot gives you 8. So that's good for like storage and stuff like that. It's not good for graphics cards.
I'm just going to pick the top one because the SSD is at the bottom and I don't want to cover it.
And that is not at all why you do that.
I just think it looks nice. Click down.
Okay, yeah.
Take your remaining brackets.
Okay.
And just put them in the spots that you haven't used.
All right.
You don't have to screw these in. They get bolted down by the back end bracket. And your GPU is installed.
No, you want to screw them down.
Power supply time. I chose Corsair's 850 watt power supply because I need enough headroom for ray tracing GPUs when they come out, and I don't want to have to upgrade it again. So all you have to do is take the brick and make sure that you align it with
power supply
insulating pads, so that the power supply doesn't short circuit and come into contact with the rest of the system.
No, it's an anti-vibrational material. It's just a rubber stopper, so it doesn't vibrate when the fan comes on.
So just take it in, slide it in,
and there he goes, putting it in backwards.
Have a snug fit. And then shift it to the back and make sure it's right up against the frame. Now you just take the required screws and you tighten.
This is awful.
So next step, we're going to install the CPU core. In this case, it's going to go on the top end of the case, and we're just going to have the hose hang out for a little while until we install the processor, which is going to come a little later.
Which, if we're being completely honest, he really should have actually installed the CPU cooler outside the case and then just routed the hosing and everything in the actual radiator itself into the case after every bit of that was done.
Always be sure to try to place it in the system first before you install it, because you can see it takes up a lot of space. But in this case, no pun intended, it fits in perfectly.
You don't have the right to make that joke.
And we're gonna start screwing it in. And so there's nothing special about this screwing in process. They're just really long screws because they go through the entire frame of the...
I'm hoping I don't have to say anything here. Look at that screw. Look where he's putting it. And look where you think... Those screws are really long because they go through a set of fans into the radiator. That's why those screws are like 2 inches long. Because it has to go through... I literally have just a fan chilling here. That screw has to go through that much space and then into a radiator that big. There's a reason the screw is long, buddy.
cooler, and they take forever.
They take forever because you're screwing it in the wrong side.
So next up, cables. Every power supply is going to come with a big bag of Velcro cables. It's
Not
kind
every.
of daunting at first, so you always have to find the ones that are going to fit.
Not every one of them, just modular ones. Just the modular ones. Quit lying. I can see why this video got taken down.
In this case, you need to match those cables with the correct descriptions on the power supply.
Easy
The
enough.
next step is we're connecting the power supply to the motherboard with a 24-pin cable.
Okay.
We're just matching that cable from the motherboard, threading it through the back, and attaching the 24-pin header to the power supply.
Okay, I'm hoping he cleans this up later, but based on his act, he still hasn't even put the processor in yet. That's like the first thing that you do.
So that we can have one of the connections complete. The next few additions will be for the GPU, for
Okay.
any specific ports that the case has, for any lighting that the case has, the CPU cooler, anything else really. We're installing the CPU, the heart of the computer or the brain, depending on how you look at it.
No,
So
it's
to
the
do
brain,
this,
not
we're
the heart.
just going to remove the plastic covering that they put
Okay.
on the motherboard.
Yep.
We're just going to take this little plastic part out. Just toss that out.
No. Don't toss it. Don't toss it. Okay, so the reason you never do that, don't ever do that. Do not ever do that. If something is wrong with your motherboard and you have to send it back, in order to RMA it, you have to have that plastic cover. It literally says it on the thing. I don't even think I have mine like in here. I think it's in the motherboard box. But it literally says, it says on that plastic cover, do not lose this. If you have to return this motherboard to the manufacturer for like as far as a swap out or any kind of repair or anything like that, they require that piece because there are pins underneath there that are exposed that are very easy to bend. And if they bend, no processor will work in it. This hurts.
And now we have an exposed CPU holder, or rather slot,
Socket.
on the motherboard.
Who paid this guy to do this? Is this his first time?
And we're going to use the CPU applicator.
What even is... This guy's pulling out tools that I've never seen before. And that I've never even heard of.
This is a special little part that not everyone may get, but this motherboard that we got from ASUS definitely does have. It's called a CPU installation tool. It makes it really useful if you want to install a Core i7 hexa-core CPU.
Alright. You know what makes it really easy to install that processor? The gold triangle on the corner of the processor and the triangle on the motherboard that you line up and just drop it right on in there.
Yeah, we've got one, and it's an 8th generation chip, and it's ready to go, and it supports overclocking. So
This guy just talked about the CPU like it's super exclusive. Like, there's only 4 of them in the world. Yes, we got one. Okay, let me drive to Best Buy real quick and come home with it for like $400. Now I got one.
So what having this little installer does for you is it's basically a brace that you can apply right to the CPU.
He doesn't even.
and
He
line it
looks
up
like he
with
doesn't
the
even know what he's doing
triangles
with
that
it.
You'll see on the bottom left corners. And this will make it easier for us to apply it to the motherboard and then apply thermal paste and then apply a CPU cooler on top. And we're just going to carefully lean it down into the system and make sure that everything lines
You didn't even use the tool.
and we're going to clasp down on it and we'll be
See, look, it's over here. He didn't even put. He's like, you're gonna use this tool, and then doesn't use the tool.
good to go.
That's so awful.
We're about to apply thermal paste to the CPU.
Okay.
Every CPU
Wait.
cooler actually comes with a bit of thermal
Okay,
paste
that's
already
fine.
neatly applied in a circle around it, but it's usually not enough. It's good.
What do you mean? It's usually not enough. It literally just has to be thin enough to cover the surface of the processor to transfer the heat. That is the perfect amount. What are you doing?
Good, essentially PC building practice to have a little bit extra and layer it on top of the CPU.
What are you... Just...
The final portion is to...
No, okay. For those of you who don't know, you want to put a dot the size of a grain of rice. A little bit goes a long way, because whenever you wrench down that processor cooler, it's going to spread, and you wanted to cover the heat spreader at least 75%, 80%, and that's effective. This guy is going to put so much on there, it's going to overflow, and is going to get on the motherboard and the socket and everything. This computer is going to last maybe a couple of weeks.
To add the CPU cooler to the top end of the processor. So you're going to see that there are...
Oh my god. That is so much... that he's going to destroy this computer.
Here with brackets and holders right here. And they're going to keep the cooler raised off the processor, but...
You don't want to keep it raised off the processor. The whole point of it is to make contact with it so the heat will transfer.
It's also going to be close enough to actually physically come in contact with it. Like, basically keep it cool.
Okay, I got to rewind it because I got to hear that moronic statement where he contradicted himself.
So you're going to see that there are 4 brackets, or rather like screws in here with brackets and holders right here. And they're going to keep the cooler raised off the processor.
Keep the cooler raised off the processor.
But it's also going to be close enough to actually physically come in contact with it. Like,
it's going to make it close enough to get physically contact with it. The guy's a wizard. He is Call Guinness. He's a wizard. He can get it close enough. Is not to. It's going to keep it raised off the processor, but it's actually going to make physical contact.
Basically keep it cool. Take thumb screws like this and just screw them on.
Okay.
So now that our internals are done, we're going to put all the panels back on, which is the top glass, side glass, front glass.
So is the NVMe solid state drive the only storage that you have? Because 400 gigs is not a whole lot if you're going to be doing gaming on this. Like, you want to have a 500 gig solid state drive and at least a 1 terabyte hard drive, just to kind of keep... If you don't run out of storage that way.
And of course, the back panel where all of this fun stuff is happening.
Okay, so...
So we fully built the PC.
Oh my god. What are you... What is this rat's nest in here? This looks so bad.
You see, everything's put together, and we got to the post screen.
He got it to post, everyone. He got it to post. It's a miracle. He got it to post after all that.
So what's next? Well, you need a USB flash drive with your Windows installation media on it. And of course, a license key. So I plugged that up, installed Windows in
there's a spider on my wall, that's why I looked up.
Couple of minutes, installed a bunch of drivers, and now we have a fully functioning gaming PC ready to run some games.
I don't know how
right
functional.
Now I've got Armor 3 running at maximum settings, native resolution, which is 1080p HD.
Okay.
And it's running pretty smoothly. Like, I'm averaging 70 and 80 FPS, and this is normally like a very intensive game to run.
You're in a plane. A plane. You're the only moving thing on the screen, and all the environments around you are several hundred feet away. I would hope you'd be getting 70 FPS, because all your game has to actually render is the plane and the trees half a mile away.
And it's still doing a pretty good job. So right now I'm playing League of Legends. It's one of my favorite games.
Oh wait, okay, are we supposed to be benchmarking this or just playing it? Because you don't use League to benchmark.
I'm actually playing against a bot, and I'm distracted, so I'm not actually doing so well. But
you're not doing so well because you built a shit PC.
Otherwise, like, this is pretty much what you would see me do on a gaming computer. This is pretty much what I'll be doing on a gaming PC. Okay, that's good for you. Hopefully one that somebody else built. Stuff out, and hopefully have really high frame rates. Like
you can play League on a lunchbox. You can make a potato battery and have a hamster wheel to process the graphics, and it'll run at 30 FPS.
I am right now. I'm averaging 120 FPS,
Okay, 120.
and that's only because I've actually locked the game to that frame rate.
The whole point of this was to benchmark the PC and see how well it would run, right? So why are we locking frame rate? Why are we putting a limit on how much this thing can perform? Hey, go and take that Ford GT on the track and see how far you can push it, but don't go over 80 miles an hour.
Because I can get around 300 FPS playing League on maximum settings.
So
which
do it.
is a little bit absurd, and you don't really need that, so I locked it.
Well, running at the maximum frame rate, frame cap's 300 on most games, reduces input latency. In Overwatch, at least. So yeah, running at 300 FPS makes sense.
Building a gaming desktop has been a great experience.
For everyone but you.
I'm able to max out a lot of my favorite titles, and I'll be able to play a lot of upcoming titles like Battlefield 5 and Cyberpunk 2077.
You're literally not going to have a computer when Cyberpunk comes out. You realize that. You've choked off your air supply for your power supply. You've applied a full tube of thermal paste to your CPU, and you left the CPU cooler's thermal paste on there as well. You might have destroyed your all-in-one liquid cooler because you're wrenching in a screw that's way too thick to go through the backside of it.
Without worrying too much about the parts I have.
You should be very worried about the parts you have.
When ray tracing GPUs come out, for example, I'll be able to upgrade without having to buy a completely new system.
You're going to have to buy a completely new system.
And if I have a problem down the line, I can always just swap out a part and have it serviced rather than losing my whole computer.
You're going to lose your whole computer, and you're going to have to replace your parts very soon.
And of course now we also have a computer to test and benchmark games here at the Verge.
Please let somebody else test and do benchmarks. Capital One, remove your branding from this video. You're gonna do yourself a favor. I don't have anything else. That's it's so bad. Let me see if I can find. Let's see. I've got to find it. There was the finished build. I saw a screenshot, and that's what actually, not a screenshot. I saw a photograph of it there. There we go. I wonder if I can just, there we go. Yada, yada, yada. Here we go. So let's take a look. So it actually, that's kind of funny how I was watching him punch those screws in from the top, and suddenly they're at the bottom, like where they're supposed to be. I think what happened is somebody came in and saved this at the last second who didn't know what they were doing, because there's still obviously a lot of problems like this whole rat's nest that's going to destroy the absolute crap out of the airflow for the system. He's missing a CPU cooler screw? Oh my god, this is so bad. Like, I am actually worried for this guy. Like, I knew immediately, since the original video is not even on YouTube anymore. Like, The Verge actually removed it. Look at this! Look at this! This cable's just like, just putting a whole lot of pressure on the bottom half, and it's just running right across the VRM there. And I mean, at least he used the tweezers, or as we normal people call them, zip ties. God, this is horrid. This system is going to be toast in a couple of weeks. I don't know, dude. This is rough. And he was using a Logitech, like, that was one of the things I noticed in the gaming video. He was using a Logitech membrane keyboard. Granted, it's a $200 keyboard, but it's not mechanical. It's not for gaming. Same thing with the mouse. So everything he was doing was happening like a couple of like frames after he was doing it. And he didn't even have the motherboard screw for this right here. Like, if you don't do this properly, your motherboard can short. And just having those posts on the top just kind of exposed. This is really bad. I don't understand how the Verge could actually get away with doing something like this, and nobody was just like, please stop. Like, just looking at this, like, the parts list was really good. The build guide was really bad. Alright, I'm done. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to bed. I'll see you guys later. And I hate everyone who suggested this to me.